This is the entire process of how I edit a $200 client project as a Muslim video editor, from cutting the raw footage to delivering the final video, and one very important step, which is actually my secret to landing high paying clients. So let's jump in. But first, how did I even get this job? To answer that question, we have to go all the way back to where it all started. January 15th, 2025. I got a message from this guy named Adam who wanted to get a short VSL edited. At the time, I was still using Upwork to find jobs. So this was actually a response to the proposal I had submitted. This was my first time chatting with Adam, and after some talking, he gave me the contract to edit a short VSL for him. It wasn't this $200 project, but we'll get there. I got the VSL done in a couple of days and sent it over. He asked for some minor revisions, I did the revisions, and that was it. But then, a couple of days later, he messaged back and asked for some more revisions. Now, even though our contract had ended, I still did the revisions anyways and sent him the revised video. Some time passed and I didn't hear much from him until February 19th, 2025. Adam reached out to me for another short edit, another VSL. So just like before, he sent over the footage, I got to work and I finished the video fairly quickly. Another 6 months passed and I wasn't expecting anything else from him. But then on September 29, 2025, Adam reached out to me once again, this time for a $200 project. After discussing the project, he explained that he wanted 3 small videos edited for the launch of his new YouTube program. As always, I got the raw footage and I started cooking. My process for editing pretty much any client project looks very similar, and it's just like how we pray. So once I get the raw footage, the first thing I do is preparation, much like wudu in praying. I make a folder structure for the project where I have separate folders for everything. This keeps everything tidy, so in the future if I ever have to come back to this project, it isn't just an absolute mess. Next, I drop the footage into Premiere and adjust the audio to improve the sound quality. Then I add an adjustment layer and color grade on top of it. I like to do these before cutting the footage, but you can also do them later. Then I get to cutting. I cut out any mistakes, dead spaces, or any retakes. Once I'm done cutting, I export the final A-roll and move on to motion graphics or animations. This is like the prayer itself. I import the A-roll into After Effects and jump straight into animating. Right? Wrong. You know how in praying, you need to have intent or niyyah before you can start praying. This just means that you need to be physically and mentally present to start praying. Similarly, you need to have an idea before you can start animating. That is why in After Effects, I first watch the whole video from start to finish. I don't use traditional style storyboards. Instead, I storyboard in my head, and for me, that just works better. I use B-roll for simple explanations and add animations whenever there is a complex part in the video. While watching back the A-roll, I put markers on areas that need B-roll and animations. Doing this beforehand saves me a lot of time. Before adding a single keyframe, I already know what animations I want to make and where to put them. Now comes the actual prayer, the animations. At this point, it's just a matter of going through the video from start to finish and adding the necessary B-roll and motion graphics. For this specific project, I did not use any B-roll and just added animations wherever needed, because that's what Adam requested. In most of my projects, a lot of the animations use very similar style and very similar assets. That's why I start by creating a new composition and call it template. In this template comp, I create or import the background that I'm going to use. For this project, I used the same background I used for Adam in his previous VSLs. I just needed to tweak the colors a little bit. Next, I add some adjustment layers. First, I add a vignette. Then, on another layer, I add a fast box blur and some quick chromatic aberrations. But I mask it out so it only affects the edges. This helps guide the viewer's eyes to the center of the screen. Depending on the project or the animation I'm making, I might add more effects or remove some of them. Next, I add a camera and a null object. I label them green and rename the null to CC01. I duplicate it a couple of times and link the camera to the first null. Now, the template comp is complete. I duplicate this comp and adjust it whenever I need to make a new animation. Here is a breakdown of one of the animations I made for this project. I duplicate the template comp and name it Intro. Since I already have an idea of what I want to make, I download all the assets I'm going to need and import them into this comp. For this animation, I'm using this YouTube logo and some icons which I got from Flat Icon. Since this is going to be a 3D scene, meaning I will be using the camera, I turn all these layers into 3D and position them where I want. For the icons, I want to change their color to a gradient and animate them fading up. So I add a gradient ramp to one of them and adjust the colors to my liking. Then I add a transform effect and animate it fading up. Now I just need to copy and paste these effects onto all the other icons and they're all done. I also added the fade up animation to the YouTube logo. So here, as you can see, I position all the elements for the scene 1 where I want them, and then I use the CC01 null to make the camera zoom in at the start. I link the null to the CC02 and move it down a little. Next, I link it to CC03 and move it to the right where the second scene will be. Here, I repeat the process of finalizing the scene and animating all the components. Once that's all done, I add one final camera move and animate it going down just a little bit. I rewatch the whole animation and adjust the keyframes to make sure it all flows smoothly. Then I repeat this exact process for every single animation. Once I'm done with the animations, I move on to sound design, just like we make dua after prayer. I render the final video and import it back into Premiere for sound design. As a Muslim, I avoid using any background music and instead I use nasheeds. These are halal tracks made with sounds from your hands and mouth. For the sound design, I use various sound effects like whooshes, rises, hits, etc. I like to keep the overall sound design low and subtle. A good rule of thumb for adjusting the volume of the sound effects is lower is always better than higher. By the way, if you're a Muslim creator or a business owner and you're looking for editing services, check out the link in the description. Once I'm done with all the steps, I export the final video and watch it one last time before sending it over. And let me tell you from my personal experience, always watch your exported videos before sending them to the clients. Trust me, this will save you so much time and so much trouble. Once everything looks good, I send over the video and wait for the response. As usual for this project, the client asked for some minor revisions. I made the changes and sent the video again, and this time it got approved and I got the payment. Remember how I mentioned a very important step at the start of the video? Well, that step or part of my process not only helps me land high-paying clients, but it also helps me with life in general. And that part is passion. I try to give my 100% to every project I get from every single client. Not just in work, I try to give my 100% in life as well. Because honestly, if you really want to do something and you know it's worth doing, then you should commit to it and do it wholeheartedly, just like praying. If you commit to it 5 times a day and you do it wholeheartedly, you will notice the benefits. And you will see for yourself that praying does indeed deter one from indecency and wickedness.